All right, hey, this is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. It is the first variety show portion that I'm doing where I have the co-host, Lori. What's up, Lori?
Hello. What up? It's good over here. How are you?
Nah, I'm all right. I'm still on disability and getting paid to do what I like to do and trying to just kind of soak it all up because this is probably the only time I'm going to get paid to do what I like to do until I turn it into something where I can get paid to do what I like to do. So,
Are you on disability or unemployment?
Disability.
Oh, okay. And that's just for this time?
Yeah. It was a short-term thing when I had a pre-existing condition. I have like really bad, what's that shit called? Tennis elbow or tendonitis in my elbows. And so I had gone to the doctor previously, like 3 weeks before this whole COVID thing happened. And so I was seen for it. And then when the thing happened, I'm like, well, it's perfect time to go take some rest. And I was lucky to get it.
Well, hopefully when you get back around, you can get some, manual therapy on it, some physical therapy or massage therapy. Like I work on that all the time. So, there's modalities out there to help you when you're ready to dive a little deeper into that healing process.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing all the, like the stretches and icing, and then they gave you the little thing that you like buckled down your tendon and then also some KT tape things. And so the recent thing, I was like, well, why don't, if that's not working, then maybe I should try diet and go back to that and get off of all of the inflammatory things that I'm eating, and then go back to some more anti-inflammatory foods. And I actually had a good, I'm editing one right now with a nutritionist from London or UK, somewhere over there. And she talks about all the different things all that stuff. She's not like a coach.
Great.
Yeah, she's not like a coach, but she's like actually has like letters behind her name.
Well, that's fantastic because I think it's really important for everyone to be looking at decreasing inflammatory foods right now, because that is one of the biggest reasons that we have comorbidities. So, or underlying conditions. So, our body is made to heal, but in our Western medical system, that's not what we've been told. We've been told that if we go to the doctor, they give us a pill, and then that, puts a Band-Aid on our symptom, but that's not actually accessing the healing that we have within ourselves to eradicate that symptom instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it, which can actually increase your risk for more disease because of the pharmaceutical, with all of the side effects that comes with it. So honestly, looking at foods is one of the most difficult things we have in our culture because we live in a fast food culture. So it can be really hard, but I find when people hit a situation where maybe it's like rock bottom with pain, they've been dealing with pain for long enough, they'll finally, look at changing their diet. And that it's amazing what that can do for your long-term health care. So I think that's probably the best thing that you can do. And I'm super stoked that you have an episode that's coming out about it, because we need more information.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing that I was considering doing, since I've done this whole like thing before, where keto and gone through losing weight, 35 pounds, and and it took me 2 years to put it back on because right now it's back on. And just disclaimer, yep, I'm plumping back up again, and so. What I want to do is where a lot of people get stuck at is, all right, well, my clothes aren't fitting, and it's very apparent that I'm getting fatter, and like, what do I do? I know what you have it in your mind that you know what to do, but when you actually sit down and start thinking about it, all right, well, what do I do? Like, what diet do I get on? What, where, all of these things, right? It's like a labyrinth of like, I know I need to do this, but people just get stuck in the process of it. So what I want to do is just kind of like do a video, like the process, like video what would that be considered, like a video
A video
diary?
diary.
Yeah, of what
Yeah.
that process looks like, even from the coach, that I'm talking to, the nutritionist that I'm talking to, they'll be a part of that situation too. And in that way, it sort of puts a roadmap of all right, well, how do you do that? And even from me, like, all right, well, here's what you need to do. You got to go into your refrigerator, whap, 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 throw all this shit out, throw all that shit out. That's all garbage. And then
Mm-hmm.
even to the grocery store, like, all right, what foods to pick? As
Sure.
somebody who's getting started, how do you get fat adapted? I mean, what is that process like? What foods do you have to do that will put you into that, instead of having to like just flail about aimlessly trying to, like, oh, well, maybe that'll stick. Well, oh, maybe that'll stick.
Hmm. Well, I think it's important to start with one thing, because what happens is we get overwhelmed and then we don't do anything. And then we get stressed out and then we don't do anything. And we keep up with our regular habits that are creating the issue. So this is what I tell my clients, especially if I'm having them do homework, I give them something for 5 minutes. I'm like, you can find 5 minutes in your day. Like even yoga, people are like, oh, I need to do yoga. This is like the mentality often, like, I need to do yoga. I need to do yoga. They're thinking this all the time, but they're overwhelmed because they can't find an hour out of their day to do the yoga. So I'm like, do 3 postures, do 5 minutes. When we decrease our overwhelm, we're much more likely to take those steps towards something healthier. So like for you, the first thing I would say is the one thing you should do in the beginning is cut out sugar.
Mm.
Like take that one out. And right now, if we're home and, we don't have all those temptations where we're going out constantly and, because life isn't happening quite yet, you actually have a little better chance of making that change if you don't have it in your home, if you don't have it available and you break that cycle, give yourself 3 days, give yourself a week. And usually after you've broken that cycle, your body doesn't crave it as much anymore. And once that happens and it makes you feel better, you want to do it. So then you enact a really positive cycle. So it's really like take away the overwhelm, break it down, do one thing at a time. And when you're ready to add something else in, do that. Just don't be looking at all of these things, because then you're just like, screw it, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, what she said. And and that's really what I just kind of want to, like, do. All right, well, here's the process. Even from
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you do if you don't have a gym? Like, I don't have a gym right now, so what am I going to do? This is what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go jog, and then in between that, do the other things. Just sort of build something, so people can see, like, it's not, we make it harder than it actually is.
Absolutely. I don't have a gym. And because I resisted paying for a membership, I figured out how to work out on my own. And I do it 4 or 5 times a week. And I have all these things in my backyard that I use to work out with. And it's amazing. And I don't have to pay for it. So I save money at it too. And it's been the best fitness. There's your puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been the best fitness routine for me, because then it's less time. I don't have to take the time to drive somewhere, to take the class, and it can fit into my day easier. And so I don't get overwhelmed by it. So, it's like we have to break this cultural conditioning of like, oh, you have to have a gym membership. You have to take the yoga class. You have to, it's like, no, wait a second, break it down. You can do these things. You have so much within yourself that you can access and do on your own, that I think it's important to remember that, we don't have to be doing all the things that we're told we need to do.
Yeah. Sorry about that. My dog is barking at people walking through and I can see them right now. They're walking through right over there. So good boy. Good boy.
Yeah. Actually, with dogs, you're supposed to like reward them for alerting you, and then you go and like look at the thing that they're alerting you to, so that they understand that you're taking care of it.
Yeah.
That their job is over and now they can let you do it. So they're good to alert you, but then they can stop their job.
Yeah.
Dog behavior is really interesting. I'm actually having like a dog situation this morning. I'm having a minor panic attack.
Oh yeah. What's wrong with your dog?
I don't have a dog, but I'm in the process of possibly adopting a puppy.
Mm.
And I've never really wanted to go back to the puppy stage, like, because I work in dog rescue. And so I've always planned on getting like at least a 10 or 11 month old or older that, is pretty established. They can hold their bladder. I don't have to spend so much time training them, all of the things.
Yeah.
And I think I had a temporary lapse in sanity yesterday. And I suddenly was like, I want the puppy. And now I saw a video of the puppy this morning and I was like, what did I do? What did I do? Oh my God. It's a like real puppy.
Yeah, puppies are a lot of work.
So much work. So if you're sensing a little like deer in the headlights for me this morning, it's because I'm having a minor panic attack inside of my body.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know. Good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that. The warning. But yeah, dude, puppies are a lot of work. I mean, I've thought about like maybe, cause I know that this one's I'm going to outlive him. And man, this dog, I love this dog so much. Like he's the best dog that I've ever had. So, I mean, like the same kind of almost like one level below the child love, you know what I mean? Then there's him. And like, the same thing, I start thinking about, man, what am I going to do when he's gone, and start thinking that. And then, the tears start welling up and oh, damn it. And so
it's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe I should, at what point do I get another puppy so he could still kind of train him? You know what I mean? On how to behave. And because he's super trained and like very obedient, does whatever, but the most lovable dog in the world. And so, but I'm like, that's the part that I like, there's really, unless like this would have been the perfect time to get a puppy, you know what I mean? Because you're there for 3 months, you're able to, imprint on them and train them somewhat, get them crate trained at least, but yeah, it is a daunting task.
Well, that's what's happening. Because like I said, I work in dog rescue also. And we are actually like really, really low on dogs in Oregon because they've all pretty much been adopted. And, in a lot of the independent rescues, we're pulling from California, which is a high kill state, Texas. This puppy that's coming in is coming from Mexico. But like, I'm ready, like so many other people right now, like I'm ready to add that family member in. And I think I just got like, I just kind of was like, okay, I'm going to take the puppy because I can't find the 1-year-old that I want, but I'm ready. And now I'm kind of like, oh my God, I did a wrong decision. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? So my heart's a little seized right now. And it's okay. We do foster to adopt. So even if I really decide, because I'm by myself, I have so much work that I'm doing, podcasting every day and editing. And then I have my other job. And I don't know that I have the time for a puppy. Sometimes it helps if you have a partner and you can share the responsibilities. So if I really feel like I'm not the best fit for him, I want him to have the best life and I'll foster him and then he'll go on to another family because he has a line of people that want him right now. So I'm not worried about him. I'm more worried about my sanity.
and then you can see why you're in a lucky situation where you could change your mind or but think about the people that that's why you have all these strays, right? Because people get into that same thing. They think about it and then it's an afterthought and like, all right, well. And for people that aren't dog people or animal people, they're just like, oh, well, I'll just let them go. Or, take them to the pound, let the pound deal with them. And it's like, man.
Yeah, it's horrifying. But that's why I'm such an advocate for foster-based rescue. We have so many here in Oregon, and I'm out talking about this all the time. And I tell people, if you're thinking about getting a dog, become a foster home because then you get the perfect fit for your family and you don't have the guilt. Those dogs are always going to go on to a loving home that's great for them. They're going to have a great life. And you didn't feel forced into a decision that, wasn't right for your family or wasn't right for you. And so I really think we need more education about the foster-based system. And Oregon's really great at it. I mean, we have so many here. And we need to get it like much wider through the country and through the world because then we don't have the problem where people are abandoning their dogs all the time. and usually foster-based rescues are independent and they will stand by the dog for their life. So if a circumstance comes up a couple years later, they take the dog back so the dog never goes back into the shelter system and it doesn't re-traumatize that dog. So I think it's really important for people to look into it if you are thinking about adopting a dog. So I'm stoked that I could actually talk about it based on my stress and pain this morning about my decision.
Yeah, and have you ever been to a like another country like Mexico and and seen like how many dogs are just running around loose? I mean, and that's on like the tourist areas. If you go back into like in Cabo San Lucas, so if you're on the main road, you're on the main drag, right? You'll see some dogs rolling around, but if you go off of that back into the neighborhoods, there's tons of them. I was like, oh my god, dude, they just I don't even think anybody owns them. They just run around rampant, because they're not fixed or anything.
Yeah, it takes so much awareness and education, and that's what this rescue that I work with, it's called Street Dog Hero because they take in so many street dogs from other countries, and they do a lot of spay and neuter clinics, and they try to really increase awareness around that. So this puppy was found on the side of the road with its siblings, like full of ticks and parasites and all those things. So yeah, but I mean, it's a puppy, so it hasn't accumulated the trauma that a lot of these other dogs have accumulated by the time they get here. So I'm just really grateful to be involved in these rescues and know about them. But you know what? You brought up something that I wanted to talk to you about. You were talking about, because the last time we talked about experience of love, because you said that, once you had your daughter, you experienced a love that you didn't think that you had ever been in love before and things like that. But I've heard you talk a couple of times about your daughters. And because I have such a deep abandonment wound and trust wound, I kind of wanted to talk to you about your first daughter and that experience, if you're open to going into that.
Yeah, and we can talk about it. Yeah, that's fine. But I know what I think I know what you're going to refer to, and it's like.
Tell me, what am I going to refer to? Tell me.
My kind of nonchalant, like,
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because if she hears that, then maybe she'll think that I don't care. But I mean, in all honesty, it like I've tried so many times to reach out, and whether it's and there was a situation too where they could have reached out to me, because when my grandparents died, they left like 20 grand to my daughter, right, the Jordan, and they could have reached out then, and neither one of them chose to, and so I was like, all right, well, I'm not gonna like, what more can you do other than be a pest at this point,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess I could not ever talk about it and be fake about how I feel about it.
No, I don't think that's a good solution.
But I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's out of my court right now, out of my hands, and it's in hers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to go deeper into it because, I'd heard you say the same thing a couple of times about how, you're on the Instagram and you've reached out and it's kind of up to her if she wants to know you. So I want to, maybe we don't know the backstory. And I thought that it would be good to talk about that a little more for your listeners to hear a little bit about that, because if you think about it, like what I'm doing is I'm looking at it from her side. And I'm sure you've done this before, but when she was young, you left her life. And kids don't understand why that happens, even if it's in the best interest of the child, right? So for her, she developed a trust wound and an abandonment wound at that point. Of course, I don't know her experience with, her mother and your relationship with her mother and things like that. But my thought is, you had said if she wants to know you, she can reach out. But I assume you want to know her. Right?
Yeah.
It's a deep topic. But
yeah. and I mean, I could actually go into, no, I'm not going to go into the actual text messages back and forth, but there was some back and forths, um, and that was just, maybe that goes into my not, I mean, because that's more, I don't know, it's more intimate, I guess. I guess, can that be even a thing with, you know what I mean? Like somebody that you're not intimate with. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, if you think about it from her side, as you said, she's 20 years old and she lost her trust with you at a very young age because you weren't
18,
there in her life.
It was 18 months. So I don't even know, like that that was so young that I doubt that there was even any memories of that, but.
Oh, yeah, there's memories. My abandonment wound happened because I was adopted when I was a newborn. So, yeah, there's absolutely memories. This is what we were talking about before we started the recording, which is epigenetics, how your prenatal experience, your birth experience, and your postnatal experience can actually inform a lot of what happens in your adulthood. But these are the most informative times when we're young and we're starting to experience the world. So her experience as she was growing up at 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years old is that you weren't there. And, however she was told about that experience, she believed that you didn't care enough to come back into her life. Now, that was probably not what your experience was, but I'm talking about this from a very young child's perspective. And so over the years, she may have lost a lot of trust. So, it would take a lot to build that trust back up. And my thought is, if you kind of sent love to her without the expectation of anything in return, and giving her, sending her letters or doing whatever, letting her know that you really do want to know her and that you're there. But the more you do that, the more it actually builds the trust that had been broken from a very young age on. And so for her, it might not be once or twice that you tell her that you want to be in her life or that you want to know her, but it might take, years of consistency of just sending her love and caring and waiting, but giving her that, helping her build trust back up. And that's why I wanted to explore it a little bit with you, because we don't tend to think about what happened when we were children and how that is informing how we're acting now at 20 years old or whatever, because she might just need more, tons of letters from you to realize that you're not going to leave and that you really are there and that you continue to send her love. And then eventually, if she gets enough trust in there, then she wants to know you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I actually never even thought about it that way.
I didn't think you had, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I thought it would be a really important thing to chat about, just to start exploring it a little.
No, and I think that's because, and you're probably right. She probably is experiencing, because we'll have a conversation. It's been a while since we've had one, but the last time, I just run out of shit to talk about. You know what I mean? And I just don't, or I get involved in whatever it is that I'm doing, and I just kind of forget about it. And I do that with a lot of people too.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just my thing. I think it's just, I'm such a self-absorbed person that, and I've gotten this complaint. I've gotten it from people that I've dated too. That I don't put a whole lot of attention into things other than things that like myself.
Well, I mean, that's a good awareness, and I think that's a behavior. I don't think that's who you are. You know what I mean? I think that we have behaviors, and everything can shift and be fluid and move, and we can work on ourselves constantly. Look at what you're doing. You're putting out this podcast. You're telling stories of all these people, redemption stories, and you're sharing that with the world. So that's a really giving thing as well. And it might be, you might have a fear in your intimate life of not getting a return from someone. And so you don't even put the effort in, because that's a hard thing in relationships. If they're not ready, but you commit to it because it's your daughter. And if you start realizing like the abandonment wound that had, continued throughout all these years, yeah, you might not get a return for a while. You might have to keep building that trust for a long time. And it's like I don't know how to come to a balanced place within yourself about that. If it's too hard and too scary to keep putting energy out and love out and not getting it back. But I just really wanted to explore it a little. I thought, because I'd heard you say the same thing a couple of times, I was like, I think that's worth having like a deeper conversation about, because I think people out there might be experiencing something similar and not realizing what happens when we're children and how that seed gets planted so deeply. And if she feels like you're going to continually abandon her, then she's going to have a really hard time putting effort in, because she has protected herself over all these years, and she's not going to just suddenly let that go in an instant because you're like, well, I'm here. Like, come to me when you're ready. Like, she needs to like really trust that you're there and that you're going to continually be there. Relationships are complex, and it's the ones that I think you find those ones that you're really willing to like put a lot of freaking work in, and it doesn't happen very often. Because of my abandonment wound, I leave relationships constantly because I'm scared of getting, abandoned and left. And I put all this love in and then they just leave me.
Yeah. I also, I didn't think about it from the angle where you were talking about like when I think about it, it's like, all right, well, I left and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, you're right. That was the end of it for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure she's gotten stories of, what happened or whatever her mom's told her. Who knows? I don't know. But this has happened to me. I mean, in my own life where I wasn't there, but somebody told me a story, and then all of a sudden that story now becomes my reality.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you're a child.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense that, whatever, like, she experienced it from whatever she was being told as stories, as, oh, your dad didn't want you. Maybe, I don't know.
But it's not even just the stories. As a child grows up and they don't have a parent in their life, and that parent is never reaching out to them. I had a wonderful family. I am madly in love with my parents who adopted me, and I had a great upbringing, but my entire childhood I was tormented with, why didn't they want me? Like, that was the repetitive thought in my head, and it was so painful. It caused so many tears. I was suicidal because I didn't understand why people wouldn't want me. Like, what was wrong with me? So even without the stories, when she's missing a parental figure that was there and no longer there, her story in her head is that she wasn't good enough for you to want to stay. And then that wound can transform and get deeper in other ways as we grow into our culture. And then she had to go through life, if people are like, well, where's your dad? Then she had to answer for you over and over and over with all of her friends or with society. And so, it can become really complex, but I just kind of wanted to look at it from her perspective a little bit to open that up, because I think this is, the most important thing. What I'm realizing, especially through the quarantine, is community over currency is what's so important. Money is not going to just fulfill us and buy us happiness, but it's really who we put our love into in our relationships and our communities. And it's not easy. And you have a lot of years, that are stacked up in that relationship that have been created in all kinds of different ways. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Big stuff.
That was sobering. Thanks for fucking up my high.
Maybe I made it a little better and a little deeper. You know what I mean? Like, I think that I just kind of wanted to put some possibilities out for you that I think that you weren't opening up to, because you have your experience. And so when we can start kind of, backing up and getting a little more perspective and thinking about other people's experience. And that's why podcasts are so awesome. We hear all of this great information that maybe we hadn't ever thought about. And, maybe that's like a really big apology coming from you that you were like, I had no idea. I was only thinking about my experience. It's nothing that you did wrong. Like, we have to get away from like, oh, I did this wrong. We do the best that we can with what we have. And when we get more and have more information, then maybe we do better or different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I absolutely know what you mean. Once you know these things, and I did a episode recently where somebody asked me, because I'm in a union and I had no idea that for whatever reason I didn't. I've heard of Mayday before, but I didn't have any idea that it had to do with workers or the world around the world. That's the true Labor Day. I just always thought of the picnic one, and and this guy kind of like schooled me, and I was like, well, I didn't know this, and I've been doing this forever, and I didn't know this, and he's like, well, now you know, so now you got to do something about it. I'm like,
yeah,
fuck.
There you go. I mean, I think this is the way that we get stronger as communities, because authentically apologizing or being like, I didn't know, like, even especially with racism and sexism and misogyny, it's like, if you're like, I had no idea, and thank you for informing me, thank you for educating me, because now I'm going to do better and I'm going to change that behavior, instead of just feeling defensive, like, no, that wasn't me, I'm not like that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Own up to it, get some ownership and some compassion, and be gentle with yourself, and be thankful that we can get more and more educated and get more perspectives so we can elevate ourselves and each other.
But I also think that you have to be in the space too, the right space, because like you could have, that's all, what you're talking about is all fine and good. But if the people that you're, that are responding aren't in the space, whether it's maturity or just open to, like, because I've been in this space for like a year, I'm really open and receptive to like criticisms, because I've been forced to see my own like inadequacies, like, oh dude,
Mm-hmm.
The way you think about some things is really fucked up. You shouldn't, so now when somebody says something about my thinking or how, I really don't get defensive about it. I like, maybe they're seeing something that I'm not,
Yeah. I mean, feedback is great. And even if someone had said this to you 5 years ago and you weren't ready for it, it planted a seed. It doesn't mean, you might feel defensive and you might not be ready for that change or that information, but the seed was planted. And then maybe 5 years later, when you hear it again, you're like, oh yeah, like that was already kind of like marinating in my thoughts. And now I really get it. And now I'm ready to make the shift.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Thank you. And I did see the thing, and that's probably is why she doesn't reach out, because she's like, well, he obviously doesn't care enough to keep a conversation going with me. Why should I even worry about it?
Yeah.
So
trust takes a lot to rebuild after, that many years of, an experience in whatever her world and her experience was, but there's a lot of layers to it, and there's plenty of time left. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. We can always change course. We can always choose something new. And I love that. And I love learning. And I'm doing so much therapy right now around my abandonment wound and around my relationships, because, there's a pretty big reason I'm single right now.
It wasn't just the woo-woo.
It's not just the woo-woo. That's for sure.
Your witchy bass don't scare them away.
Well, I like my witchy bass, because if they don't like the witchy bass, they are not for me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, that's like one of those things. It's like, hey, I just had one last night where I was like crying. I was like, what? It was more about the puppy, but I was like, what did I do? And even the puppy, it's like, I'm scared to like commit to that relationship. Like, I get really scared to commit to any relationship because of my past, and it's something that's been going on a long time. So I'm into getting any more perspectives, doing my own podcast. I have gotten so much healing, and like my therapy sessions are like intense and big because I'm just like, whoa, you're doing so much research. You're talking to people, you're getting new perspectives, you're getting feedback, you're putting a lot out into the world, but you're also receiving a lot. So this is like a major personal evolutionary process.
Oh, tell me about it. That's one of the main things that keeps me going.
Well, I think that's why you picked me, right? You knew I was going to like probably do this, which is like open up some stuff.
Yeah. Well, it was for a reason. I wasn't expecting that one, but it's all right. That's what makes an interesting show, right?
Right. Well, I'm sure you can see my side because you've talked about it in interviews. I thought it would be important to get a little deeper into it in another interview instead of, just, putting your experience out there and then closing the door. I was like, let's open that door because I think we can learn a lot more about you if we open that door a little further because nobody had in your other interviews, including myself, because you said it in our last talk. And so then I was like, once I heard it a few times, I was like, okay, this is something worth exploring. And so thank you for being open to that, because before we were recording, I told you there was something I wanted to talk to you about, but didn't tell you what it was. No, and you're like, all right.
Sure. Okay.
Here we go.
I want to create good content.
Glory ride.
I'm all about good content until it gets turned around on me.
Well, I think it was a great conversation. Thanks for joining in and being open to it.
Yeah. No worries. I'm pretty much an open book. Everybody knows I'm fucked up, so might as well enjoy and let everybody in on the process of how to fix it, of how to fix the fucked upness.
That's the thing. We all are like, it's this is a hard life. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of pain. And so I think that when we can explore those emotions and those experiences, maybe it helps a lot of other people out there going through something like that. So I just want to applaud your vulnerability to go into that conversation with me.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. And I'm going to go listen to some of your shit and figure out something to
I'm sure there's plenty there
to get you on. We got a couple of questions from the Facebook group. One from Monica Vandermeer, and I believe you said she interviewed you, right, a couple times?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that interview that I did with her is going to come out this Monday.
Okay.
I think her podcast is called Front Seat, I think.
I don't know. Let me see. I'll tell you right now.
Front Seat Podcast.
If it's on her Facebook profile.
But the interview, actually, if you're interested in the conversation that Sean and I just had, that's a much deeper interview about epigenetics and, the imprint that happens to us very, very young, at a very young age, and how that can affect our adulthood. So if that piqued your interest at all, like I would listen to that interview because I've kind of built my career around it because it's been my life, since I was put up for adoption as a 3-week-old baby.
Yeah, I can't find where it is.
I'm pretty sure it's called the Front Seat Podcast, but
sorry, Monica, it's not on your Facebook profile. If you're out there listening, maybe you ought to throw a link up there. Thanks. So, anyways. Yeah, she asked a question, and then also Andrew Turner, who I interviewed, and he will be, one of my future episodes. He's down in Texas, so let's hit Monica since she was the first one to post it. I got to get back over there.
I'm pretty sure I know what it is.
Yeah, something about singles, right? Like
Dealbreakers. Since we're both out in the dating world, do we have any deal breakers? I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and do that one first?
Sorry.
I was going to say, since yours is probably way more sensible than mine.
Well, I was thinking about it because honestly, I haven't really dated in a year because I got into a car accident and I was in a lot of pain. And no one wants to date when they're in pain. And then I started the podcast and I was so busy and I was in pain and it just didn't really work out. I think I've been on one date in the year and it was a great date, but it didn't go anywhere. So So I was like, what's my deal breaker? Like my deal breaker right now is me. You know what I mean? Like I just have no capacity to date. And so if somebody, I'm always open. And so I'm at the point where if someone, showed some interest in me, I would have to I feel like the deal breakers are all on the table because I would have to feel like it's a very special connection. Like I would have to feel immediate trust with them. Like I am not in the space to go out on dates right now and deal with people's stuff. You know what I mean? So it would have to be like this soul connection that my heart feels when I look at them, and like it would be worth exploring because like you said, I have so much going on in my life that I don't have time for emotional drama at all. And when you're just dating around, there's so much emotional drama that comes into that. And I get really sick of that. So then I just stop and I'm like, I can't deal with it. And then I don't meet anyone because no one comes up to me in real life. But I would be open to it. But again, it has to be like a serious, I'm not going to go through the emotional drama. If I see anything, like I'm like out, you know what I mean? So I feel like my deal breaker is me right now.
Well, that's a good one. I mean, at least you recognize that, because there's and are cool with not, having that kind of, that connection with anybody, and I can see exactly how that would be appealing. I get in those spaces, all the time, where
I love this space because I feel like it's like relaxing. I'm not like, it's not on my mind. Like, oh my gosh, like I want to like connect with somebody or, it's like, I don't even think about it. So it feels really good. Like, I'm just like, yeah, my life's cool. Like I don't have any like drive or desire to get into that because of the emotional drama is just too much. It would be another thing on my plate that I can't handle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, men, we have that drive to do that, but that's the only thing. We have the drive to do that, but then we don't want anything else after that, or whatever it is after that, we want it on our terms. So, I mean, really the perfect woman for a guy would be somebody who you can just call whenever you want, get it in. And
Wait a second. You cannot put all men into that category.
Not all men, but there's I guarantee you probably about like 75% of them.
Well, let's narrow it down to your experience right now, because I feel like that's a little unfair, because there's a lot of men out there looking for deep connections and relationships and commitments. So let's let them have that. But let's go with your experience.
Okay, so for myself, the perfect woman would be, and this is only because I'm in a space where, like, I've got so many things going on, like yourself, but I'm not willing to sacrifice the sexual component of that. I don't want to. I have fun with it, and there's a time and a place to knock it out on your own. Definitely, there is.
Yeah, you can do some pretty, like, maybe I can be a little more creative with that, but I'm not going to create emotional drama for myself. So it's a nice intimate date with myself that I can have happen anytime I want.
True. And I have used it myself to avoid bad decisions. Bad dating decisions, or it's been a while and you go out on a date and it's like maybe it isn't somebody who you would really actually date, but the possibility of sex is on the table, and are you going to take it or not? Well, if I hadn't knocked it out prior, I probably would, but since I have, I'm able to make a more logical decision up here versus down there. And so men have three brains. Okay. We got our gut, we got our head, and we got the other guy. All right. Which is in a lot of the time for me. Okay. Let me put it back to me. I don't want to generalize for all you guys out there, even though I know most of you are dirty fucks just like me. It's just I use it as a tool. And and I'm getting a little bit better. I'm getting a little better about it. It's really not that big of a deal anymore. But it's a learned habit, though. It's a learned behavior, same as anything else, and how you approach sex, or with the opposite sex. All those behaviors are all learned, and it's if they're not beneficial and they hurt other people. I think if we were talked about this before, if you come at it like from a just like being open and honest about your situation and what it is that you're putting out there. And I liked the information that you gave me about, are you telling them that you're just looking for more of a lover, or you know what I mean? And I had never thought about it like that, and I probably never have put it that way.
Oh, you have to. Words are so important. Like, you have to use those words. You've got to speak your truth, and then you're going to have less emotional drama. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, and you're saying, well, I know what I want, but they don't know what you want, and they want something completely different, and you still move forward with it, then that's going to create that emotional drama. And then that just creates stress for everybody. And it's unfortunate.
Well, I mean, so I didn't mean to make it sound like I hadn't ever said anything like as far as wanting that, but I mean, I've never heard it put in like the lover sense before. I always just say I'm emotionally unavailable, and I think that's too generic and too broad of a spectrum,
Well, yeah, and you keep saying that, and that can become truth. Maybe things could change for you, but if we tell ourselves we are this, like, we believe it. Our body believes it. So, if you look at reframing how you're approaching it, like, wait a second, no, I want a lover. Like, there's a very specific type of way that I want to engage in this relationship, because it is a relationship, no matter what. You know what I mean? Like, that really bothers me when people are like, oh, I don't want a relationship. I'm like, if you're continuing to talk to me, even if we're not committed, we're in some kind of a relationship. My friends, I'm in a relationship with them. My family, lovers are in a relationship. Polyamorous people are in a relationship. Committed people are in a relationship, And so I think it's really important that you say, this is the type of relationship that I'm looking for, and be really specific about the boundaries in there. And it leaves room for your soul to, like, open up to emotional availability. It doesn't mean it's going to happen then, but if you stop telling yourself this is how I am, then it leaves a lot of room for you to move in different ways and be fluid and adaptable. But
that makes sense.
I want to make a point here. So we somehow you got talking about sex, right? But I want to hear she wants to hear what your deal breakers are. So to me, it sounds like your deal breakers are when people want emotional commitment, or when they want more than a lover type of relationship. Is that a deal breaker for you?
Yeah, pretty much right now it is.
Okay.
So yeah, I was getting to that because I was, oh shit, I didn't answer the damn question.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm like a politician. I'm good at talking around questions. So yeah, the deal breaker probably would be if I'm dating you and you're not putting out by the third date, I'm not wasting any more time on you. Sorry. I don't have.
That's a harsh way to put that out there, though. Those words are pretty intense. So
I just don't have time. I don't have time to deal with you. I don't want to make time to deal with somebody who's that like hung up about it.
Well, right. So I think that would be not the right choice of person for you to be continuing with, because if you're looking for a lover, we all kind of know what the definition of that is, right?
Yeah, I never really put it as lover. That's like, I don't know, maybe I like, when I think of lover, I think of like my like, that would be a description my mom would use for something. You know what I mean? Like, you're my lover. Even when that term gets dropped in a conversation, I just kind of like,
so then you need a different term for it. Yeah. But like, I just think that your approach when you're like, by the third time, if you're not putting out, then I'm not going to waste my time on you. That feels like really harsh. So if you're looking for someone that you want to have a sexual relationship with without the emotional connection, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I think whatever you want to call that, I think that would mean you're not going to go on 3 dates with that person because that's not what you're looking for. You know, you can find that person that's looking for the same thing, but if in 3 dates they're not in the type of relationship that you want to be in, then that's probably not the right choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. You got 3 dates, and I'm not like going out. I'm not saying that. Like, I'm not going and saying, hey, if we ain't fucking in 3 dates, you're out of here. You know what I mean? No, it's not like that. But I mean, it's in the back of my head. You know, I'm just like, all right, well, let's see. And I'm saying, hey, look, you know, this is. And I'm probably using those same stupid words that you just called out. Like, I'm not really emotionally available and whatnot. You know, yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so I want to put a challenge out for you. So the next person that you connect with, you know, that you have interest in, I want you to use positive language in the beginning, you know, and really be honest and vulnerable with them and say, you know, this is really important. This is exactly what I'm looking for. I feel a connection with you. So I want to know if this resonates with you, if it's the type of relationship that you want to engage in with me. And I just want to be very clear, you know, that I won't be joining in an emotional relationship because I have a lot of other things going on, whatever, and see what happens with that. Like, if you really put it out there for them, like, so clearly exactly what you're looking for, like, write it down, make a list of like, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And my challenge to you is reciting that list and letting them know and seeing how that works. Like, does it work better for you? Like, do you have a different type of connection with someone when you get that honest about exactly what you're looking for? You know what I mean? Instead of just throwing this blanket term out like, oh, I'm emotionally unavailable. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, really get very minutely specific and see what happens. I'm interested to see, like, if that changes the way that people respond to you. You know what I mean? Like, it might make it a lot more clear very quickly, and somebody might be like, no, I'm out. I don't want that. And then you don't go through the 3 dates. You know what I mean? Or someone's like, yeah, that sounds great. That's exactly what I'm looking for too. And it might be like a really rad connection immediately because you're both in, you know?
Yeah, I'm more interested to see what the percentage is. I'm like, all right, well, how many do I got to talk to in order to get the outcome that I want? You know what I mean? So it means, all right, well,
yeah. But I really want to hear about, like, if your process changes, you know what I mean? If it happens a lot quicker, or if it, you know, you just, those people are out quickly. So you don't even like spend time going through something that you're both not looking for. You know, you're not matching up.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to do that and like report back to us and see what happens.
All right. I've got a couple prospects, so I can try and weave that in, see what happens, or at the beginning stages of the the online dating deal. I'm having a hard time just staying engaged with anybody anyways, just because of the simple fact that I know I can't go and meet you. So I'm like, why waste my time?
Right, because that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah,
you're not looking, to like continue to connect on text messages or on the phone. Like, you're looking for an in-person physical connection. So you might need to wait until the quarantine's over and, we can be close to each other again, because that's the type of relationship that you're specifically looking for.
Yeah. Like some horny old man. Yeah, that's whatever.
Well, I mean, sexual connection is really important, and it's really healthy for us too, as long as everyone is feeling, the same
as long
way
as it's
about
fair
it.
for everyone.
Yeah. It is great for our health, though. Like, that's one of the things that we have as a natural high, and it can be really incredible.
Oh yeah, there's been some times when, like, I've had some great sex that's felt way better, or almost as good as taking a hit of some good stuff.
And it's so much healthier for you and doesn't take you down a very dark road or path.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully. Sometimes it does, but
hopefully it doesn't lead to addiction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there is such a thing as sex addiction. Do you feel like you have that? Do you feel like that might be part of what's going on for you?
I don't know. I mean, I've thought about it before. But no, not so much, because even like if that were the case, then I'd be like, hounding for it now. You know what I mean? So I don't think so. I think more than anything, what I like the hunt. You know what I mean? That's really my thing. I like the hunt, the chase, and then once you accomplish that goal, then for me it just kind of you know.
So are you really looking for just like one-time sex connection? Like you're not looking for someone to, repeatedly come back and engage together? Is it just a one-time thing?
If it's good, then and the chemistry is good, then oh yeah, of course. I mean, any good operation, loves repeat business. But I mean, it's got to be worth it. So and then and then for me, then that's like when that connection is like solid, and it's like, oh yeah, that's like that's you get down good together, then that for me, that's when I start exploring. Oh, okay, well, let me know a little bit. All right, so what else about you is interesting? Do you match up with me on? Do you like doing the things that I like to do? Do you like to be on the water like I like to be?
Oh my goodness. So I'm hearing some fluidity here. Like maybe there is like, an open for emotional connection eventually is what it sounds like.
Yeah, eventually. But I mean, it's like you gotta, I guess that's my way of like getting what I want and then and making it to the way that I want it to be. And then, oh, okay, now we can start looking over here. And start diving into like what kind of a person you are, aside from that, because there could be some amazing, and I talk about this all the time, and there could be like a 9 or a 10, that walks in the door and their attitude can just turn them into a 2. And
sure, yeah,
and it works the same way for guys too. We could be high on the scale, and then just the way that you think about things, or like you're rude, or you're just oh, bam, there goes a point, there goes a point, there goes a point.
Yeah, attraction is not just physical. There's a lot more that comes into what we feel for someone, no matter what kind of relationship it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's great that you have the awareness of like what your comfort level is in your process. And honestly, like I'm going to give you this advice again from women, is they need to hear exactly that. Like if you don't have a lot of wiggle room in the beginning and you need it to like line up that way for your own comfort, you need to be absolutely honest about that with them so they know what to expect. And then they're not going through an emotional struggle within themselves. And then they can just kind of like open up to that process. And if it's something that they're interested in, then maybe you do get to that point and maybe you don't. Maybe relationships aren't meant to be forever. Like all relationships, some of them do last forever and some of them don't. Like a lot of them play out. They can play out in a week, or they can play out in a year. They can play out in 10 years. They can last for 50 years. I think we have this problem in our culture of feeling like, if this relationship doesn't last forever, I'm a failure, especially women. Like, I don't want to speak for men because I don't know that experience, but that is the message that we grow up with in our culture. And so that can inform a lot of what we do in relationships, because we can have a lot of guilt if it doesn't last, or the what's wrong with me? Like, why didn't, he or she want to stay with me? So I think it's important that we start, especially teaching our children fluidity and adaptability, and that relationships are important and they all can have a different theme. They can mean something different and they can play out. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever. Like they're there for a reason. They probably are going to teach you something really great, and it's okay to let them go as well.
No, I absolutely agree with that. There's some people that you don't want in your life forever. So
yeah,
hopefully.
And there's some people you want in your life forever and they leave because they're scared because of their trauma and their wounds, and it's like, when do you decide to really like kick it into high gear and try to stay? Like, how long do you try to stay for? And I think that's why we have therapists. I think that's why we go through therapy, to like figure those things out. But yeah, so you're add that into your challenge. Like tell someone your process. Like be like, I know that this is what's comfortable for me, and is that comfortable for you? And let's see where it goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll definitely do that because I can see what where I probably was going wrong and how.
Okay, now you give me a challenge.
Okay. Well, you can't give you a challenge for dating wise because you're not open to that. What could I challenge you on?
I don't know. Well, if you come up with something, throw it out there. We won't spend any more time like waiting on it.
Yeah,
but I just thought it'd be fun if we both gave each other a challenge.
Yeah, I guess a challenge. Like, what can I challenge you on? I did see that. Oh, you know what I did see? I did see that surfing picture of you wiping out.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's such a huge wipeout. I love doing that. You know what I mean? Like, I love putting out there, like, this was freaking hard.
Yeah.
Like, when I was learning to go left that week, like, I was so frustrated. And I remember that wipeout because you can see, like, my hand slipped off the side. And so my board went down. And then it came back up. And I remember in my head thinking, oh, I still might get this wave. So then I like came back up and I was going to try to pop up. And then it just like threw me under. My board went flying. It was. And then if you could hear the guy that was filming it, he was like, oh.
Yeah, I didn't hear that part, but I was like, I saw the footage.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like that's the thing, you know, getting good at anything. It doesn't just happen, you know, even with podcasting. Like, I think maybe this will lead into Andrew Turner's question. I feel like I've been going through growing pains this whole time, you know?
Yeah.
And this has been great, like doing a variety show where we're just chatting. Like, I feel like this is kind of like flexing that muscle for me, and I'm learning and I'm, you know, getting better at like bantering and like keeping it live. So, you know, my podcasting in a year or two is going to be totally different than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
Just like my surfing now, I prefer going left. And if you watch those videos, like, I was struggling. Like, you could see I was trying to go left and then I didn't. And then, you know, it took me under. And
yeah, I saw that.
I wish I could show a video now because this is years later and I love lefts. And, you know, I have a really smooth ride when I do them. Like the last time I was surfing in Canada, I was practicing lefts again. And this was a year ago. And it was so beautiful. And I had probably the coolest ride of my life. I was kicking ass, going left. I'm like looking down. There's fish fucking swimming under me. And it was just like, I felt like, you know, rainbows and unicorns were going off in my head. And I was like, oh my God. And I never felt that in Costa Rica because it was such a hard challenge. But now I'm doing it and I'm feeling free and loving it, you know?
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. I wish I took some lessons when I was in Hawaii or Maui. And I got up on a big board and small, but never in waves like that. I didn't, you know, I for some reason, man, I was down in San Diego once, or not San Diego, I think Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, and I was boogie boarding, and I got a little too far out, and I was at the bottom of the curl where it slams down on top of you. Yeah. And there's a shelf right where it was that goes down like that, and I got like slammed right into that shelf in the side and barely made it back up. And then I got enough breath to expel and then inhale, and bam, got hit again. And so like ever since then, man, I've just kind of been like, no, ocean's scary.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to respect it. Like it takes persistence and courage. In that same trip, I got my ass handed to me because the swell comes in, and if you don't paddle out past the swell, you're on the side of the breaking wave. And these waves were huge in Costa Rica, like much bigger than what you even saw on those videos.
Yeah.
And I didn't get on the other side, and somebody yelled at me and they were like, turtle roll. And I knew that wave was so huge, I couldn't even turtle roll. So I just tried to go under and hold my board. And it took me, and I got pounded all the way in, hitting rocks. Like my legs were scraped up and I just kept getting pounded. I couldn't breathe. And then the next day when I went out, I was scared. Like I was so scared to even take a wave. But if I hadn't like if I didn't have such a love for it, maybe that would have like ended my time in the ocean. But I have such a love for it, and I pushed myself because I know that I love it, and I'm a pretty courageous person, especially with water. So I pushed myself, and now I don't have that fear anymore. But it's real, you've got, there's danger to it too. So you have to like, and when I was scared, I gave myself that time. Like I chilled out. I didn't really take any waves the next day. I was like, I need to get that trust again before I really take any of these waves. So I think it's important to give yourself that space and be gentle with yourself about your process. But if you're ready, like, try to get back on the horse sometimes. If it's something that means a lot to you, it's going to take work to get there.
Yeah, I like being on boats in the ocean now. Like I go deep sea fishing all the time, and I don't mind being on the surface of the ocean. I love that because I mean all the marine life that's around you at any given time out there is crazy because you see all kinds of different stuff. I mean I've got videos actually on my Instagram. If you go there's one video of what is that, a humpback juvenile breaching. Like there was a whole pod around us and they were coming up just like you see in the movies, the nature movies where they're coming up and they're eating. Then you see huge ones, just huge, and there's coming up and down, and the juveniles were playing around the outside, kind of like, I don't know, maybe they were having like a perimeter around them, and we were kind of moving around where they were because they floated into where our space where we were fishing, but I mean, it really doesn't matter. You're in their territory and their deal. And so one of the juveniles like breached with almost like so close to us that his splash almost hit the boat. And yeah, that was kind of crazy. We saw a lot that day. We saw seals, we saw those, caught a bunch of fish, saw a great white. Because the great white the great white came after all of the feeding was done, and because of all the dead fish.
Wow, so, that's cool.
Yeah, it was a long day of doing that, of seeing that kind of stuff. It was cool. Yeah,
I paddleboarded with humpbacks once, like unintentionally. They just suddenly showed up, and there was a juvenile, and like the mama was there. So of course, like the mom was being protective of the juvenile, and they were breaching so close to us. My boyfriend at the time, he's from Venezuela and he's a surfer. And I was so scared, like my legs, like I had every muscle tensed in my legs so I wouldn't fall off because, the swell was coming. So it's like harder to keep your balance on a paddleboard. Yeah. And I was just like, what if this whale comes under and like pushes me off my paddleboard trying to protect the juvenile, Yeah. And I couldn't walk for 2 days. That's how tight I made my legs so that I wouldn't fall off the paddleboard. And Richard, my boyfriend at the time, like the next day we were talking about it, and he's like, I'm not going to lie, I was shitting my pants.
Yeah, they're scary, man. And right before that, there was I saw coming at us an adult dive. And so I was like, oh, because I knew he was going to come right underneath us. And all three of our lines started, his whole pectoral fins, right, went right underneath the boat. And we were in a 19-foot boat. And this dude was probably twice that size, right? And, it broke both of their lines. And mine, I felt it like going over his, his pectoral fin and scraping along the barnacles. I could actually feel it. Through the pole, and I was like, oh man, I was really freaking out. Yeah. It's like, oh my god, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but you do have to respect. You are in their house. Yep. That's their world. It's not ours.
Yep.
It's kind of the truth everywhere. We're in all the animals' houses and taking them over, but I'm not going to get on that tangent.
Yeah, we're at hour 8, so if we want to if we want to keep this thing under to where people will stay tuned in, we better move it along. So we do have one. Andrew had a question, and he said, how do you two manage your time with the podcast that y'all do? And he's from Texas, y'all. So is it I'll get to it when I get to it, or do you have a hard schedule? Asking because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to stay consistent with my podcast. Recording, editing, publishing has to take up an enormous amount of time. How do you all tackle this issue?
You want to start?
Yeah. All right. So right now, usually I'll try to get something, out by Monday. But since I have so many to get through, I've been like just working on them and getting them out as soon as I finish them. Just
Oh,
because,
wow.
just because I have 800 megabytes worth of on my or my platform, and I want to use it all up. So if that's 800 megabytes, I think that's maybe 12 episodes per month I can put out with that much. And so I really want to try to get to it because with the workload that I have right now, that's going to be like 3 months that it's going to take me to put out what I have without recording anything else. And like these ones, like with this one is going to have to get thrown in there. Like this one will probably go out pretty soon after to make it relevant to what we're doing, sticking to the month. So, and the editing, yes, the editing does take up a huge amount of time, like so much time. And I've backed off on it where I'm not taking out hardly as many ums or useless filler words, right now. I'm just kind of almost letting it go as is. I'm listening to it to make sure that there's nothing that I don't want in there, you know what I mean? Or maybe, a guest, sometimes they'll say, hey, can you edit this out? I didn't mean to say that. One from another country, they said a disparaging comment about their government, and I had to go back and take that out because they get persecuted for that kind of shit.
Right. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Hopefully that answered your question, Andrew. For me,
I feel like this is the hardest job I've ever had. It takes so much time, and I am not cranking them out like you are. Because I usually have my practice. I don't now in quarantine, but I have so many projects. Like I'm trying to write my book. I'm trying to get a webinar out. I have my retreats that I'm always trying to do. Like there's so much going on that I decided to put an episode out every 2 weeks. But I really put a lot of time into those episodes. Like I feel like I try to make them really innovative. So it's not just the conversation. So like the episode I'm putting out this week, it's going a week late. It's the first time I ever missed my deadline. So I'm trying to like deal with my guilt on that. But I just had a really hard week last week. Like I couldn't find my motivation. I had no creativity. So I just gave myself that space. And then the creativity started coming back because I just don't want to put out an episode that I feel like isn't in line with what I want to do artistically with my show. And so the editing of this episode, it was a 30-minute conversation, and I am spending days editing it because I've decided to she's a poet. And so, I got really creative with it. And I've had like a bunch of women recite her poetry that I'm splicing in at different points of the show. Wow. And then I have to go and I do an intro that I talk about, that isn't with the conversation. And then I have to splice that in. And then I have to put the intro, my general intro and outro on it. And then I always put an outtake at the end. So I feel like my process is so creative with the way that I do my show that I can't, just crank them out. Like I can't just do interviews and put them out. Like my editing process is really intense because it is a different artistic way to do it. And so I'm still at one show every 2 weeks. And like I said, this time I didn't even get it out, and I'm not even working my other job right now. Yeah. But I think we're all going through a lot personally. We're going through big evolutions with all of these intense changes. So I'm allowing myself to go through these healing processes too and not be so hard on myself because we're realizing that stress is a big issue for our health. And so maybe that's going to change a little. Maybe we don't, have such rigid deadlines. That's what I'm hoping. So I hope everyone is really generous with me with this being out a little bit late. But yeah, I think Sean and I have a pretty different process with it. And that's interesting,
Yeah, I'm not artistic at all. The most artistic that you may see me get is maybe on my outro. Because that one I actually have to do right as I'm editing it, I'll do it then because I've already heard it again, and it takes me back to, okay, and I know what we're talking about, and these are my thoughts on it. But I've really like even tapered that back quite a bit just to get through it, because the editing part is like, for me, it sucks, man. I don't like it, because I'm so anal about everything, right? I'm like a perfectionist. If I take one out, they're all coming out. And the ands, and then the next I'm going for, my phrase that I always say is, you know what I mean? And so I
say that too.
Yeah. So, and I'll hear it, and I'm like, oh my God, shut up, dude.
I know.
Can you
say
likes? Something else? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I'll even go through and take a bunch of those out. Some of them you can't because they run right in and there's no cutoff. And so you just have to leave them alone. But I mean, a couple
the process of editing, I think that, if you look at that, because there's kind of an art to editing. If you decide that that's going to make it, if it doesn't like give a good sound bite, then I'll put it back in, because I'm like, well, it's better in than out,
Yeah. Yeah. And you take it out, then you go back and re-listen to see what it sounds like. And then sometimes I'll fade out where I clipped and fade in where it goes. And sometimes that'll fix it a little bit to where it doesn't sound like it's choppy,
Yeah.
And then one thing to go back on that, to add one more thing, and what I'm finding, and we talked about this prior, is that there's a setback too in doing the interviewing process the way that I'm doing it, because if I'm having 7 conversations in one day, you're hearing 7 different variations of whatever it is I'm going through at that point, right? Versus if I did it every week, I would be going through something completely different the next week, so I'll be talking about that. So, because usually we always talk about what we're going through at the moment, right?
Right.
And so you're gonna be hearing a lot of repeat stuff until I get through these episodes, other than like what me and her are doing, which will be completely different. But some of these episodes, I'm going to try and switch them up to where it's not like that, but you may catch some repeat thoughts.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that answers that. And, the first episode down of the variety with the co-host, Lori Rising, and her questioning Sean. I was on the hot seat today. It felt like a little bit, but that's all right.
I was on the hot seat last week. So, give and take. That's what all relationships are.
Oh, is that what this is? All right. Yeah, for sure, man. And you're right. There is a reason why I had you here, and I wanted you here because I knew you would challenge me, because your perspective is way different. You're like one of those. You're a sensitive type woman. Oh yeah,
and, I'm a sensitive. I'm spiritually sensitive, like hardcore.
And I'm a very calloused, like hardened kind of guy. So I need a perspective from because most people aren't like. There's more people like you than hardened like me. So if I'm gonna navigate this world, I better figure out who I'm navigating through, right?
Right. Well, and I think I was reading something this week, and they were talking about follow people that have different perspectives than you. Even if you look at politically, like even if you're on one side, follow somebody on the other side, just to really flex that muscle for yourself and like have a little bit more compassion instead of being like, I'm right, you're wrong. You know what I mean? Because that's what's keeping us in a war with each other. That's what's keeping us from getting like huge things done, because we have these sides to so many things. And if you start to like open up to someone else's perspective in a gentle way without being in confrontation with them, you might start to realize where experience comes. We all have different experience, and it can inform what we do much of the time. So I think when we develop more compassion with each other and kind of let ourselves get taken out of our box, that's when we really grow and our communities do get stronger, and we get more stuff done together instead of apart.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Confirmation bias is a real thing, and it
Mhm.
keeps people, in their vacuums of information, and nothing but the same kind of information and opinions get bounced around in this vacuum, and you never and it just you're just around those same people, and you don't expand your horizons at all.
Yeah.
You're not going to really grow. You're just going to stay stagnant in this little vacuum that you're in. And who even knows if that vacuum has the right ideology, or because you don't get a chance to experience anything different.
Yeah. I think I'm really great at it because I was raised in small town conservative Catholic Iowa. And look at me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I have a lifetime of experience with that because I'm madly in love with my parents, and I would never let our differences in political views or religious views, I would never let that take my love away or change that love, because screw that. You're not going to bring in these systems that create a situation where I'm not going to have my parents. Like, I'm going to rise above that. Like, I'm going to love the shit out of them and let them have their experience and their opinions.
Yep. Yep. Well, I think that's a good note to end on.
Yes, this was so fun, Sean. Thank
Yeah, I had
you.
a good time too. I'm looking forward to the next one and see what the rabbit has in the hat.
All right. Yeah. Let's see. Remember your challenge. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah. I will definitely do that. I have somebody in mind right now that I'm going to approach with that. So we'll see.
Ooh, 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 ooh. Fun.
All right, cool, man. Well, until next time, everybody, stay true to yourself. Keep it 100. Everything else is just noise.